Hi. From a first glance at the novel Mouse, you can tell that it's really different from other novels that we might typically study in a grade 9 English class. This is because of Art Spiegelman's unusual but captivating way of writing, along with the fact that it's a graphic novel. I'm going to be talking about how the structure of this book shows how Art's parents' depression has an effect on Art himself. This book is a true story about Art Spiegelman's father, Vladik, and his experiences in the Holocaust. He does this through a framed narrative, with his father's story being inside his present-day life. This shows him talking to Vladik about his story, and it also shows his father's mental state in the present. What's really different about this novel is that it's told from Art's perspective of Vladik's perspective. How, you ask? Well, he does this using techniques like narrative perspective, flashbacks, and framed narratives. For every novel, the author has a purpose for writing. In Art Spiegelman's novel, it is written almost like a journal, telling about his own life, his feelings, and his father's life. In this scene, he draws himself in a dark, dingy room at a writing desk, sitting on top of a pile of dead Jews. He then talks of how depressed he has been feeling lately, and even shows how small he is feeling, drawing himself as a small child. This shows the audience all the guilt that he feels about his family's past experience, which caused them to be broken since before he was born. The narrative perspective of the scene is from a second-person narrative looking onto Art. This is the same way that he drew the telling of his father's story in the Holocaust. Art felt depressed because he couldn't do anything about the Holocaust. He couldn't prevent his family from being broken, and he could only watch their depressed state from the side and listen to their stories. The way he draws himself gives the exact same feeling to the audience, as he draws himself in a depressed state, and the audience is only able to look onto them from a second-person perspective, unable to make anything better. This causes the audience to then feel depressed as well, just as Art has. Art has been writing comics for a long time, and most of his comics are based around his depression. He included one of his other comics in Mouse called The Prisoner on the Hell Planet, which talked about the trauma he faced from his mother, Anya's suicide. Art uses flashbacks as a way of telling an important part of his past that informs the reader of a significant thing that happened and has affected him. When he had just found out that his mother had been depressed to the point of suicide, he felt so guilty about it and drew a comic. When his father found the comic, he was then affected by it, and he felt guilty that he wasn't able to prevent Anya's death. Through the flashback of his mother's death, he shows how much the mental condition and trauma of one person can affect all those around them. From the tragedy of the Holocaust, Vladik and Anya have changed drastically, never being able to be fully happy. Anya's death was brought from her depression and also the lack of happiness from those around her. And because of her depression, it also affected those around her, such as Art and Vladik, causing them to be even more depressed. Throughout the entire novel, a framed narrative is used when Art writes of his father's experiences in the Holocaust. The past and present of the book show the difference between his father's struggles and his own, also conveying how his depression was brought on by his father's depression and traumatic life. The framed narrative is in Vladik's perspective, but is being told from Art's point of view. It is key here to remember that framed narratives are not only to emphasize on what is being told, but how it is being told. When Art is telling his father's story, he's trying his best to illustrate exactly what his father is saying, as he's trying to get a full experience of himself. This is because he didn't experience the Holocaust, and at this scene, he shows exactly how bad he feels because his family had to endure so much, and he didn't experience any of it. The framed narrative is not only showing the events that happened to his father, but it's also showing how guilty Art feels about not being in the Holocaust. His depressed feelings are linked with helplessness and guilt that have come from those around him and will affect others around him as well. From a young age, Art has been affected by depression that was caused by those around him. When he wrote Mouse, he wanted to tell the world about the horrors of the Holocaust, but also how it mentally scarred his entire family. Even though he didn't experience it himself, the emotional state of his family caused him to feel just as depressed. Art has been brought up by parents who had to survive the harsh concentration camps, parents who had their firstborn son killed just so he didn't have to face the gas chambers, parents who had to endure so much pain and wanted to die every single day of their lives, but still survived. Through narrative perspective, the audience can feel depressed from onlooking on Art's depression. From flashbacks, it shows how much the past of one person can affect all those around them. And from the framed narrative, it emphasizes on how Art is telling the story of his father and how he tries to fit in and not feel guilty about not being there. Through the structure of Mouse, Art was able to convey this message to the audience in an effective way. Thank you.
And as I was on